right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Uber to the Pits podcast. I am happy to be joined by Patrick Liddy. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to catching up.
So let's get, kind of like what I do with all the guests. Let's start from the beginning. And what got you involved in motorsports? What got that itch, that bug in you to now make it where you get to drive professionally as a career?
Totally. Yeah, it's an interesting start. I didn't do any karting at a young age like most people do. I think my first experience with motorsport was going to the Long Beach Grand Prix. I was 6 or 7 and got to meet some of the drivers and sit just above pit lane. It was a pretty awesome experience, but I don't think I'll ever forget that. And then fast forward another 10 years, a good friend of my dad's was getting into radicals, and I think I was 12 or so at the time, and so he had us out, and he had his radical out at Willow Springs, and that was like my next big taste of motorsport. From there, I got to get some time in the radicals, but they wouldn't let me on the track. So I just did little autocross cone courses. I'd set them up like in the parking lot next to the racetrack, and kind of got good with that. I could barely see over the hood of the car. Had a couple little pads under me. So I did that for like 2 years. Every month or so, I got to go out there and get some autocross skills in. I would, make new courses and do little hairpins or fast S's. I wet down skid pads sometimes, so that was really fun to learn about the dynamics of the car in the wet.
Getting started at radicals is a pretty epic car to start with. Low, power to weight ratio is great with high downforce.
Totally. It's a really awesome car because it's such a forgiving, soft chassis. It's a two-frame chassis, pretty low horsepower, so you're not overwhelmed by, not having no TC or ABS coming into the big braking zones. You're kind of topping out at like 120, 130.
Yeah, but the nice thing too is with the lightweight, helps with the lower horsepower, so it makes it feel like you're in a higher horsepower car than what you actually are in.
Totally. Yeah, I'll never forget. I've been in about 12 and doing like a full second to third gear pull, and my head shifting back in the seat and thinking, this thing is crazy. But now after the Lamborghini, you get in and you're like, what's wrong with this thing? Where's the horsepower? But the cool thing is, while it's a really forgiving platform, you have to drive fairly cleanly in that car. It teaches you about the brake release and, finding the correct lines in your throttle application, because you can still get wheel spin out of the lower speed corners. So it was awesome. Got to do some club racing in that until I was about 19 or 20. So up to
all right. And then did you go straight from radicals into the Lamborghini program, or?
Yeah. It's actually a funny story because I just had a buddy out at Spring Mountain, the club that I was kind of practicing at and doing some club races. And he said, hey, you're pretty good. You should consider doing Lamborghini. And I think that was the year before. And then I got this last minute deal with PPM. They had an open seat like a week and a half out from Mid-Ohio. It was the first race of the season. You can get the super discounted seat, but it sounds like you've never driven a GT car and you don't know the track. But I kind of flew out there on a whim and decided to go for it. And it was awesome. We went out and we were first in a Pro-Am. I was driving with Dylan Murcott, super talented guy, and 4th overall. So it was a really cool start. And I did 2 more races that season in the AM class until couldn't really find another AM co-driver with budget. That's the biggest part of motorsport. But I got to put a program together in 2019 in the US, which was awesome.
And is that the one you ran with Shane? Yeah.
So I ran with Racetronics, and the cool part about, having a couple of buddies that are interested in motorsport was I would say, hey man, I'll coach you on your test day. And in exchange, maybe I can get, some laps at the end of the day and do some data laps. So I got some more time in the car, got more comfortable with it, and bumped up to the pro class. And that was a pretty amazing experience, doing a couple AM races and then all of a sudden like bam, you're competing against guys like Antonucci and Connor.
Yeah, exactly. And then, congratulations this year in 2020, you're announced on the Lamborghini, junior team. One of the, I think, what, 3 Americans?
Yeah, so there's 3 of us. I'm really pretty close with Jacob and Steven. Steven lives
Yeah.
like 2 minutes away from me. So we go on some drives sometimes and have a good time. They're all really talented guys. And I'm the only American racing in the European season now. So it's easy to pick me out.
And so let's talk about that. How was the difference from racing 2019 in the US? Well, of course, the 2020 became kind of like a cluster with COVID and everything else kind of going on this year. But, you were able to get back to Europe and go race in some races so far. And if you follow Patrick on social media, his exploits in Monaco and Italy and living the life of a quasi Formula One driver in a sense, but racing for Lamborghini. But on the professional side of things, was it the difference between, or the biggest difference from racing in the US compared to racing in Europe in that series?
Yeah, it's a completely different world over there. I've had a lot of people ask me about it, the level of competition and stuff, and I've always said that I think the level at the very top with the pro drivers is pretty similar. You have the top guys in the US that are competing against the top guys in Europe. But the difference is there's 25 pro drivers rather than 10 in the US. So it really forces you to step up your game because you're in this train of 10 or 12, 15 pro cars that are all ready to take the position if you make one mistake. So
yeah,
it's really
exactly.
cool because I'm going over there and learning the new tracks kind of as I go. The calendar is awesome. We did Misano, Nürburgring. I got to do a little prototype race at Imola, which is pretty awesome.
That's
and
cool.
I'm heading back to do Barcelona, Spa, and Paul Ricard. So it's like a dream circuit list.
Yeah, I have Spa on my bucket list. So, I'd love to get back there and do an endurance race around Spa.
Yeah, same here. I've never been, but I probably just like you, like 10,000 simulator laps around Spa. So I feel like I'm forward to doing and actually seeing Rouge, for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, just one of my favorite videos because it looks like such a video game is watching the Porsche 919 Evo.
Oh yeah.
When it broke the Spa record, racing up Eau Rouge at wide open, flat out, and the thing doesn't even move.
It looks absolutely insane in video, and the video that looks even crazier to me is around Nürburgring in the.
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks like warp speed. It's a pretty awesome car, and when you see those like P2 and DPI and LMP1 cars going around in person, you really get a sense for speed that they're carrying through some of these high speed corners with the downforce. It's unbelievable.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And then they took that car and they put it side by side so you can see the comparison of Hamilton's record lap at Spa versus the 919. And it's just, I mean, there's nothing that compares to it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I got to check it out.
So, I mean, good luck in your European season coming up and stuff like that. So now, what is it that you think why there's 10 pros in the US versus 25 over in Europe? I do know that the cost is a little bit different structure-wise, that it's a little bit cheaper to race in Europe. I mean, relative, to what racing
20
is.
to 30% cheaper, I would say, is your like average number. And I mean, there's no like set rule why it's cheaper, but I think a lot of it has to do with the transport costs and labor costs. In the US, the team guys are paid adequately. In Europe, it's, there's a lot of people who have the ability, and I think there's more of a market for people over there. But as far as pro drivers, I don't really know. I think, for me, it's a new experience being in Europe. Sometimes it's tough. I was out there on my own. So the team called me the racing gypsy. It was like, a couple of days on my buddy's couch, my co-driver's couch, and a couple of days with this family I met randomly at the race. And then, you know, of course, I got to stay for a few days on the T-Motors boat in Monaco, which was crazy. So
Yeah.
obviously you post about all that stuff, but it's definitely tough being over there. So I think maybe some of it is, you know, when you're in the US and you're established and you have a lot of connections with sponsors and teams over here, it's hard to say, yeah, I'm going to go to this completely different world and try to do it. And obviously, you know, the talent level is crazy and they're all familiar with the tracks. So you're kind of going in and have to be really on your A game.
Yeah, it's definitely going in with a very humble mind and really, you know, constantly learning, constantly asking questions from, you know, the teammates that are repetitive around the track, and just be like, you know, them coming here and, you know, I'm not saying it happened, but there's a, you know, Super Trofeo race at Willow Springs. And how many laps do you have around Willow Springs where you can say, hey, when you're going through 8 and 9, it's not a tight apex corner. Hold yourself in the middle of the corner. So that way you're carrying all your speed through, you know, the exit of 9 and up the front straightaway.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, if you don't go there with a humble mindset, you will soon be humbled. You know, first practice one, and all of a sudden you're like, what? Why am I, you know, mid pack in the AM field? You know, what's
Yeah,
going on?
are they sure they called the right person to show up and come race?
Right. Yeah, there must be something wrong with the timing and scoring for sure.
I swear they put the, you know, the timer in the back of the car and not in the front.
Yeah, that must be it. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. The familiarity with the tracks is so huge, and you know you can do a lot of sim time. For me, it's great to learn the tracks, but if you're talking car dynamics and finding you know the couple tenths you need to be anywhere near competitive, you have to be in the car. So it's always interesting, you know. You always end up with like a red flag in practice session, and at Nürburgring, which is probably the gnarliest track I've been on so far, the GP circuit.
Yeah.
It's a old school, awesome track. It was I think I had like 6 laps before my qualifying session, so it's interesting. I mean, obviously, you know, it's a little tougher, but you just kind of have to roll with the punches and keep it going.
No, exactly. Now, my other thing for you is, hold on, when do you have a end goal with racing? You know, now you're on the Lamborghini program, and that could lead to, you know, racing GT3 and like the GT class here in IMSA or the WEC. We have yet to see Lamborghini in Le Mans, but there is talks of it happening. Is your goal to see what you could do to progress with Lamborghini, or is there ways that are you looking into moving into something bigger in the GT field?
Yeah, obviously GT3 is the series you want to be in, the big boy series. But Super Trofeo is such an awesome stepping stone because Lamborghini gives you a lot of support, a lot of training, and a lot of advice. So, you know, I've talked to a lot of more experienced racing drivers about it, and they've said, look, you know, I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make is trying to bounce around between manufacturers. You know, when you have a good program going and good people behind you, you kind of want to stick with it. So
Yeah.
at the moment, I'm doing a lot of work with Dakine. It's like that sporting goods company that do really awesome surf and ski stuff. But we're trying to start this this motorsports brand through Dakine to do accessories. So I'm kind of liaison for motorsport with them, and we're trying to develop that's kind of the end goal now is you know, find a brand that works and has a market in motorsport, and develop that and kind of be the go-to guy as far as that goes.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. So what is it they're trying to do with the kind?
So we're starting a motorsports brand with Dakine. We're
Okay.
doing accessories, pretty much everything you need to go racing. But my interest was like we're doing the 3-year program with a racing team. So it's great to be able to pair up with a big company and sponsor like that, and kind of have an end goal and something as far as a game plan for the next couple of years in racing.
Yeah. I mean, too bad you didn't have a sponsorship a few years ago, but I have a few Dakine bags in my garage with my snowboards and stuff in it.
It's funny. I always get that from people. I'll mention it to them and they'll be like, oh, I've got a truck pad for my mountain bikes, or a surf rack, or a surf bag. You know, it's
Yeah.
cool. it's cool to talk to people about it.
No, I lived in Oregon for 11, 12 years, and snowboarding. So Deccan was everywhere. It's one of those local brands up there for a bit. So
Yeah, it's a really cool brand, and especially with the kite surfing stuff, that's a little beyond my expertise there. I'm not
yeah,
too coordinated outside of the car, but it's really cool stuff. I was checking out their like kite surf belts and stuff like that. It's pretty wild. But yeah,
so
I'm excited for the next couple of years to see where that goes.
that's cool. So let's talk about branding and marketing. Now, did you approach Deccan or did they approach you? How is it that you've worked with your sponsors to help subsidize the cost for racing and having them back you? So a lot of people will just look at it and say, oh, they're a great driver, so they just came to me. But it's like, no, there's work on the backside that you have to do to prove yourself to these companies that it's worth it for them to invest the money into you.
Totally. And I think to your point, some of the most successful racing drivers out there may not even have been the most talented guy out of the field, but the guy that can bring the most value to the team and the company. So whether it's sponsorship dollars or, social media following or whatever it is, you kind of have to be the whole package in driving these days. So I would, the thing that I got really lucky with was this club racing, the radical scene at Spring Mountain. There's a ton of guys that were interested in racing, but also have these successful companies that, they want to get involved in motorsports with. So last year, I worked with a guy named Al Miller who does Blue Marble cocktails. And
Okay.
he's actually like a pretty quick driver in the Radical Cup field. We were racing kind of head to head, always bumping each other and having a good time. And when he started this company, he said, hey, I want to get into the Lamborghini stuff and back you and support you, see where we can go with this. So once you kind of develop a relationship and see what you can do for a company as far as events and awareness on TV and social media, it's really cool to grow that and either approach other companies or have them approach you or meet someone and say, here's what I can offer.
Yeah.
And try to activate it a little bit beyond just slapping a sticker on the front of your car.
Exactly. And that's kind of a lot of what I want to do with the podcast is give these companies an alternate way of marketing, because the TV dollars in racing aren't necessarily there anymore, like what they used to be, especially since everybody wants to watch it online. They want to record it. They may not have the time. So there's other ways to show brands that, okay, we have, social media, we have podcasts, we have YouTube channels, we have all these other avenues now that we can bring in and add the money to the industry.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's awesome to find ways kind of outside the box, especially to help companies activate and reach people that are interested in racing, like your podcast. Because a lot of people say now, like, oh, well, it's great that you're on NBC Sports or CBS or whatever channel you're on, but I can get 10 times the viewership with a Facebook ad.
Exactly.
So, yeah, approaching the sponsorship in a different way and being able to activate it with the podcast and engaging with your listeners, or say it's bringing VIP clients to the race series and having them sit in the car, or bringing the car to an event and doing hot laps. There's so many cool things that you can offer with racing that a lot of people don't really think about that are huge, and they're unique to racing too.
No, exactly. I mean, a lot of people have this mindset like, oh, it's not on TV anymore, so what's the point of putting our name on the side of the card? Well,
Right.
yeah, it's not on TV, it's not live, but there is still a TV exposure. But there's also so many other avenues now to get you different exposure, different clientele, different views, to bring these people to your company.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I see you're wearing the First Form stuff. Those guys are really cool, and obviously they were in the Trofeo paddock too, and now they're in GTD. And it's
racing
awesome.
Wright Motorsports, Pat Long, and Ryan Hardwick. Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty good combination there. Ryan's a really, really quick driver, and obviously a great businessman too. So it's amazing to see how First Form has really like taken advantage of that sponsorship relationship they've done and gotten into motorsport like so deeply, so quickly.
Absolutely. And I mean, Ryan raced last year with a friend of mine, Brian Sellers.
Yeah.
They had a really successful 2019 season. And then, watching him now with Pat, and, they've had back-to-back podiums now. So,
Yeah, it's awesome. And of course, Pat Long is I've been watching him since I was little, and he's an awesome driver. So it's really cool
so,
to see a
so
guy
now
like
you're
that.
just going to make Pat and I feel old since we're the same age. So,
Well, he may be older than me, but I can tell you for sure he's still faster than me. So
it's, I think he's faster than most guys out there, especially in the proper prepped car. So,
yeah, absolutely.
and it's
And in a Porsche too, it takes an interesting driving style to get those things to go really fast. You have to really ring them out. So
yeah.
it's really cool to watch that thing go around track.
And it's really still one of my favorite cars to drive around track. It's one of the most well-balanced, most reliable race cars that, they've done something right for it to
Absolutely.
be so successful, through Le Mans and WEC and, in the US and all their Daytona wins and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I think probably half of the guys that I work with at places like Thermal or Spring Mountain for private coaching, they're always asking me like, "Oh, what race car should I get? Should I get a GT4 car? Should I get a Trofeo? What should I get?" And to be honest with you, I think the best answer for track days and having fun out on track is like a race prepped GT3 RS street car. You
oh
can
yeah,
just nail those things all day. They're so fun to drive, and it's really easy to get to the limit in the street car there. But the platform is bulletproof and super fun.
exactly. So how long is your program scheduled with, Lamborghini and the Young Driver Series?
So that program is renewed every year. So
Okay.
last year in 2019 was my first year with them. And it was awesome because I got to do a bunch of events with the manufacturer. We went to Aspen and did an ice experienza, they call it. So it's like a
That's
week
cool.
where some of their best customers and VIP guys come out and get to drift the Urus and the Huracan on track. So, Corey Lewis is a part of that.
Yeah.
Jacob, another young driver, is a part of that as well. So that's definitely, in my opinion, the coolest part of the program, getting to go around and experience those cars and also share, how amazing they are with the customers.
Yeah. And I mean, the Huracan, I just actually got to drive a Uterus a couple weeks ago, and actually drive it up through the Santa Monica Mountains through Malibu.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I was absolutely, for an SUV, I was absolutely shocked at how well that thing handled going up around the corners and acceleration and braking. And, it didn't feel like an SUV at all.
No, I still think to this day it's probably the most fun you can have on a track. At Monticello, we did an experience with the Huracan Evo and the Urus as well,
Yeah.
and we could get somewhat in a time range that you would never expect from an SUV to the Huracan Evo, just because we were jumping the curbs completely in the last set of S's. It was so
Okay.
fun. And the brakes on that thing, they're the largest brakes on any production car.
Yeah.
Uh, Unbelievable, as you felt. And the cornering is amazing with that Magno Rietic suspension. It feels like a sports car, and it's probably faster than a lot of sports cars out there.
It definitely was. And I mean, like the turn in was on point, and just, it held it so nicely through the corners. So, you talk about Monticello just running it over the curbs and the S's. It's like running the Spec Miatas and stuff, just driving it straight, using the S's on at Buttonwell as an additional straightaway.
Yeah, I actually did a Spec Miata race with a couple buddies out at Spring Mountain 2 weeks ago. I had to like pull my it's a 92 or 94 Miata out of the garage, and it was like it had cobwebs all in it. So I sweep them out, put some starter fluid in the air intake, and off we went.
There you go.
So, and then you're bumping down the back straight the whole time, and I think we were side by side through half the corners. It was probably the most fun I've had in a race car in a while.
I still think racing a Spec Miata or Spec Boxster is the most fun you can have in a race car, just because you're not thinking about the cost if something goes wrong. You don't mind, rubbing a little bit or a lot, depending on how aggressive you want to be. But it's just, you just get out there and you have fun. You don't think about things other than racing and having fun.
Yeah, and I think especially for me, having kind of more of a prototype background and not being used to wheeling a lot of cars
Yeah.
before a few years ago, it's awesome to get time out in a car like that because it forces you to get the most momentum out of the corner, carry the most entry speed in while not getting any wheel spin and obviously it's super fun to get the braking right with the heel toe in those braking zones. It's a blast and it's a lot harder than a lot of people would imagine, I'm sure.
Now you kind of hit on something right there. Is you have more of the prototype background with the Radical, going into another high downforce, high horsepower car with the Lamborghini. Do you feel that the Miata could be a great training tool for those cars? And where I'm getting with this is that I would use a spec Miata to go before we had sims, because we either had the original Gran Turismo 2, or spec Miatas as our training tools.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I felt like I learned more from a track in a spec Miata and than I would in just climbing into like a straight cup car or straight prep tire horsepower race car.
Yeah, I mean the number one thing that I see with people that I coach, or even sometimes with the drivers on my teams, is when you have such a capable braking system and such high horsepower, you tend to overslow the entry and get on the throttle a little bit early. It's just kind of the natural inclination, right?
Yeah.
People end up thinking that they're driving completely at the limit, but in reality, they're just pushing out of the corner and braking late, sometimes too late, and not allowing the car to trail that entry speed. So I think the brake release and especially bringing the speed in on entry to the corners is huge in the Miata, and being comfortable with a little bit of slip angle.
Yeah. I mean, with them being such a momentum car, you really have to work on keeping that momentum going through the corners, not over braking it, or getting releasing the gas too early, or getting on it at the wrong spot, because you're going to kill all your momentum. And that's where I found the biggest training tool is just really being able to manage my throttle and brake going into corners.
Totally. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned in the GT stuff is, I went out from the prototypes and immediately into the Trofeo, and I was doing the same thing, over braking and over slowing. And I went back in and I was like, well, that's all it had, that was 10 tenths. I can't go any faster. It must be the car. But then I was following some of the top guys and just realized that their carefully brake release and letting the car settle in on entry to the corner is so key.
Yeah. Especially with the rear engine, rear wheel drive car, because if you go in and not prepared and brake right, brake right with the steering wheel in the right position, you're going to be spinning that thing around.
Yeah, yeah. It once it starts going, it really wants to go because you've got that big V10 in the back and a lot of momentum. It's like a pendulum. But surprisingly, the car is really really friendly on the limit. A lot of the times in the second stints of the race, our tires are totally blown up, and the pro guys are still doing really incredible times just with a little bit of slip angle here and there, and it's incredible to watch. I think that's really what sets apart the top guys in the world from the newer guys or people like me, where it's easier to get the time on stickers, but it really shines when you're on 100 mile old tires at the end of the race and you're doing competitive times to the beginning of the race on stickers.
Yeah. And so with yeah, I mean, that's huge. It's like one of my favorite things to do in practice is give me the old tires. Just I don't even want to worry about new tires right now. I know what I can do on used tire or new tires. I want to know what I can do on old tires.
Right, exactly.
So, all right, and you're getting ready to leave in a couple days back to Europe?
Yeah, Monday. So it was great to be back. So I was there for about 5 or 6 weeks, and I've been back for a little over 3 weeks now, just kind of training a lot. And I actually am able to get in the car more here because I just have more coaching stuff going on. I've been in the Trofeo the last 2 weekends in a row, and obviously got to drive that Senna GTR, which was a crazy experience. It's the only thing that ever makes the Trofeo feel slow in a straight line. I mean, unbelievable.
Now, we talked a little bit before the show about the Senna GTR. You know, like you said, you're blessed to have friends and customers, you know, that you coach that have these vehicles that are like, hey, let's see what this thing can do, jump in and have fun. Um, you've also driven recently an LMP3 car or LMP2 car.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's talk about how close that Senna GTR was to an LMP3 car.
So in the GTR, I went out on scrub tires that were pretty old, and we didn't even get a time down. I don't think we had a transponder on the car, but in a straight line, it's 814 horsepower. It's unbelievable. You've got DRS, so halfway down the straight, you know, we're doing 150, where the P3 car is doing 120. So the straight line speed is ridiculous, and the aero for a GT car, especially, you know, kind of more of a street based car, is unbelievable. So with stickers, I did a 215 at Spring Mountain on one of the configurations, and in the LMP3 I was on scrubs and did a 214.
Wow!
But it was incredible. But I will add that the Senna kind of had the factory setup on. So apparently when you get a good setup on there, you get rid of that understeer. I'd had quite an understeer push, as you'd imagine, you know, from the factory. You don't want people snapping the rear through some high-speed corner.
Well, and it's funny. I was talking to some friends the other day, and I was explaining that when Dodge originally sold the Viper, they had to build those cars in with natural understeer because that V10 power of the Viper, people were spinning and, you know, they're acting like Ford Mustang drivers and putting them into trees.
Yeah, I saw that, especially with the original like Gen 1, Gen 2 Vipers. Those things are pretty scary to drive.
They are. So, yeah, so I understand, you know, a lot of these companies for legal reasons will put the understeer into the cars, especially for, you know, a car that's mid or rear engine, rear wheel drive, to help the consumer who may not necessarily have the background of Patrick Liddy to, you know, keep it, you know, a straight and narrow line on the street.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was probably the crazy experience I've had in a race car. I mean, that price tag is in your mind the entire time, so you're like, I'm gonna stay away from the curbs a little bit and you know, make sure I'm not going too crazy. But I mean, getting out of that thing and into the Trofeo was crazy. I mean, the Trofeo felt like a street car after the but it's only, I mean, I did a 216 in the Trofeo, so I mean, considering you have 200 less horsepower.
No, exactly.
That was a ridiculous car. It's so capable in threes.
So let's put a little thing down here. LMP3 car, Super Trofeo, or a GT, you know, race prep, you know, GT3 series car.
Right.
Patrick has his choice for 24-hour Daytona. We're going to talk similar, you know, reliability here. Which car are you climbing in?
Well, if I'm not paying for the repair bills, definitely a Senna GTR. I mean, I think seeing the hypercar class, LMDH, whatever they're calling it now, is going to be unbelievable. I wish the Senna was one of the cars competing in it, because it's just, I mean, when you see it in person, it has such a crazy presence because it's got the winglets, carbon winglets going from the top of the spoiler down to the basically the bottom of the wheel. It's a crazy car. But I'm most comfortable in the LMP3 car just because the carbon pet ones.
Yeah.
The interesting about the P3 car is there's no tunnel on the bottom. So, you know, it weighs a pretty good amount. Don't quote me on it, but I think about 2,200 pounds. And it's got power steering. So you almost drive it a little bit like a GT car, because without the downforce that the floor adds, you have a lot less than, you know, say a Wolf or you know, even relatively to its weight and power, the Radical.
Yeah.
So you're sliding a little bit more. I would equate the P3 car to like a really, really fast GT car.
Okay. So, well, Patrick, I don't want to take a lot more of your time because I really appreciate you joining us. I know you're limited time before you head back to Europe for a few weeks. I want you to go ahead and actually, you know, my last question to you is, I know because, you know, you've been doing this for you're young and you've been doing this for a short period of time so far, but looking back on your career, what would be your advice to the younger you when you're first stepping into do this professionally?
That's a tough question. I might not even know the best answer to that because it's such a tough sport to be in, and you have to have the luck and you have to have the connections. But I would say, as far as getting into motorsport, like we talked about, the Spec Miata is unbelievable. I think
Yeah,
a lot of people spend so much money on karting these days, and you learn, granted, a ton of skills from karting. But I see, a lot of people go from karts to cars, and they don't have the weight transfer down. They don't have the brake release down. A lot of the things that are so important, and you're not getting kind of the same amount of track time as you would in a go-kart. So I think starting in a light, fun car like the Spec Miata or a Spec Boxster is huge, and also just reaching out and being active on social media and being friendly to everyone you meet. I mean, there was a guy, Ron Adapatu, who's like the coolest guy I've met on the paddock, Elephant T.
yeah,
After my co-driver crashed at Road America and totaled the car in our pro season, he said, "Hey, Patrick, you've been really helpful to me this season with the data and the coaching, and I would love to have the car up in front a little bit to promote our company. Do you want to race with me in Pro-Am for the rest of the season?" And if I had kind of come in with a little bit of an ego and said, "Oh, I don't need to help the gentleman guy out on the team," I would have been without a ride.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just about being nice to everyone and putting yourself in the best position to do well and have those connections.
Yeah, I mean, really, the biggest thing too that being around this industry for so long is that the paddock, as big as the paddock is in all the series, it's a very small world.
Totally.
And if you go in having the wrong ego, the wrong attitude, coming in as an asshole or whatever, it's going to get around. And
Absolutely.
your talent may get you a ride here or there, but it's not going to give you the consistent ride. It's not going
Absolutely.
to put you with like an Andy Lally with Magnus Racing for years. It's not going to give you like an Andrew Davis, with when he was with Stevenson for years, and now all these other teams that call him and say, "Hey, I need you to come drive with us." Or Lawson Aschenbach with Riley, Michael Cooper. These are all guys that come in with the positive attitudes. They're in the pits. They have fun. They're helpful, and really, that's all you need to do in the pits. Once you have the talent and the backing, is be humble, always be learning, and just be nice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably the best advice I could give. No one wants to work with someone with a big ego, no matter how fast you are.
Yeah,
So that's the key to the racing success. You see it with the top guys. When I saw Patrick Long, I was out karting with Phil Giebler, and he's still like the most friendly guy. Saying hi to the kids, signing autographs, and just an all around cool guy. So, that's the pinnacle of where you want to be as a racing driver, and that's kind of how you get there.
exactly. So on that note, too, is this is your time to go and you know, I'd say imagine you're at the top of the podium. You've just accepted your trophy. The microphone's in your face, and who are you thanking?
Well, my dad for standing out in the sun when I was setting up those Kona autocross courses for like 3 or 4 years, and I wouldn't be there without him. Obviously, Ron at Elephant T was awesome, giving me a chance to finish out the season last year, and obviously have to thank Al Miller over at Blue Marbles for being the first big sponsor I got on board, and obviously being an awesome racer, cool guy too. And the guys at the Kind, I think there's a ton of potential there. I'll definitely keep you updated as far as the bags and try to get you one sent over. I'm working
Beautiful.
on the bags over in Europe right now. They're awesome. We can fit all the racing gear you need in a carry-on size protected duffel bag.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
pretty sweet. Other than that, just everyone out in the paddock that's helped me out. The guys at Spring Mountain Motorsports have been my home at racing, and there's a guy, Simon Payne, over there at Badger Race Tech, who kind of gave me the shove to go out and do pro racing. So it's been a huge group effort from a lot of people that I've known, and really looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Beautiful. All right. And then where can people follow you and,
Patrick
give you the
D.
support?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's Patrick Liddy on Instagram. It's Patrick D. Liddy. And I'm on Facebook, Liddy Racing and Patrick Liddy. Shoot me a friend request, and hopefully you get to see that Senna GTR onboard video.
That was pretty epic. I'll tell you that, watching that run. So, all right, guys, go follow Patrick, especially, give him some American love when he's over in Europe. With the COVID and travel restrictions, he's lucky enough to be able to get over there, even though it's limited for everybody else too. So, share that love from home, and then, good luck over there. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Uber to the Pits. If you have any questions, email us at info@ubertothepits. And we also have our videos up on YouTube. So this will be up. And actually, it's funny, we're recording this on National Podcast Day, by the way.
Oh, happy National Podcast Day.
I know, I found that out. I'm like, oh, cool, we're recording. So,
Funny.
yeah, so go check us out, follow us. And Patrick, thanks again for your time tonight.
Of course. Yeah, I got to go brush up on my Italian before I leave.
There you go. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
See ya. Thanks for having me.